Hey guys, how's it going? It's Joe Man Luke. So today I'm going to give you a guide or essentially a walkthrough on how to complete the fourth trial of the Sekhemas in order to get your last ascendancy points. It is a very difficult challenge, and especially for new players, there's a lot of information about it that I think you might not have that could be very helpful. And I will go over how to defeat the various bosses and what I did and some tips and tricks on how to do that. So if you're having trouble, this is a video for you. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I have my VOD from when I completed the trial on my Hexblast Blood Mage pulled up. So we're going to kind of go through that. I'll show you the decisions I make and talk about the various bosses and mechanics in the game. So let's get started. So the first trial of the Sekhemas you can pretty much do without any prior knowledge. It's really not that hard. It's going to be a low-level map. So you can see here I have a Djinn Barya, which is an area level 78 and number of trials 4. But the first one that you'll get is actually just a quest reward. And I think it's like level 30 or 35 or something like that. It's pretty low, and it will only have one trial in it. And you can use that same coin over and over again because it's a quest item, so you can try as many times as you want, and it's really not a difficult map to run, especially if you over level it. However, once you complete the second trial, which you have to do at the ultimatum, you then have to complete 2 more trials. So you'll have to do one for your 3rd set of ascendancy points and your 4th set of ascendancy points. You can choose whether or not to do them in the ultimatum or the trial of Sekhemas. I have found that the trial of Sekhemas is easier than the ultimatum. It is more deterministic, and you have ways to make the fights a lot easier for you. So that's my recommendation on what to do, and that's kind of why I wanted to make this video, because if you know what to do, it's pretty easy. So you can see here on this Djinn I have, it is number of trials 4. So you have to have a number of trials 4 in order to get a 4th ascendancy point. You can see in that yellow text there, it says completing this ascension trial will grant you additional ascendancy skill points. If that text is gray and it says it will not grant ascendancy skill points, then it is not the correct trial. So you have to pay attention for that. The one that gives you your 3rd ascendancy point, it says 3 trials on it. So that kind of makes sense, but it is a little bit confusing because you do the first one, which requires 1, then you skip the second one because you have to do the ultimatum, and then the 3rd one is 3 trials. So you never actually have to do one with only 2 trials on it. So you can kind of just like skip that completely and just go straight to 3. In this particular case, we're going to do the full 4 because that pretty much covers everything. The one notable thing here is that the area level on the map does matter. If the area level is lower, then the monsters inside that map will be easier. They'll have less health and do less damage. So it can be in your benefit to get a Djinn that is as low a level as possible. Now, I think the 4 trial ones have like a range of like 73 to 82 or something like that. It's somewhere in there. So you want to find one on the lower end. This one is actually, I think we use a 78. It's pretty high, so it is a bit more difficult, but just keep in mind that if you are struggling, that trying to find one, you can get one on the POE trade site, or you could just farm lower level maps until you get one. They're fairly common. I've found so many now that I kind of just like stop picking them up. But that is one way to lower the difficulty. Okay, so once you put your map inside of the altar by clicking on the altar, you will see this box come up with all these little slots in it, and those are for relics. Relics are essentially little boosters. They're little boosting items that you can use to give yourself benefits inside of the Trial of Sekhemas, but that's the only thing that they do. However, these can be extremely powerful and are pretty much necessary in order to complete the 4th trial. So I actually got some help from a friend from the stream here in order to get some of these, but if you are on Trade League, you can purchase these relics from other players, and they're usually very cheap. It's not hard to get relics that are good. If you're playing solo self-found, then you'll just have to run the Trial of Sekhemas as much as you can to try and build up some relics, and you'll just want to pick up as many as you can. You'll want to open boxes that drop relics, and just try and get some good relics. The number one thing that you want to try and find is honor resistance. So Basically, when you take damage in the trial, you will lose honor, and getting honor resistance on your gear reduces the amount of damage to your honor that you will take. If you reach 0 honor, you get kicked out, you lose the entire run. So the cap for honor resistance is 75%. So you want to make sure that all of the items that you have in this box here are a cap of 75% or more. So after you have the 75% honor resistance, you want to, in order of importance, get some more merchant options, more increased boss damage taken, and more maximum honor. So whatever of those you can get is going to help you immensely. In this particular run, I believe I had one relic with +3 to the options on the vendor, which is very, very powerful. You want the merchants to have as many purchasable options as possible. That is going to help your run. You really have to think of this as a roguelike. And when you're playing a roguelike, you want as many chances to get those powerful buffs as you can. And those buffs are going to make or break your run. So we're going to kind of talk about how I maximize my chances of getting buffs, but usually getting like 3 to 5 extra choices on the merchant is going to be extremely helpful. And then getting some of that increased boss damage taken is going to be very powerful. As you can see here in this bottom right in my inventory, I have a relic that says monsters take 30% increased damage. I am unsure if monsters also includes the bosses. Just to be on the safe side, I would just take the ones that say bosses take increased damage. The way I see it, if you can't kill the monsters in the actual maps without the monsters take increased damage, then you probably don't have enough to kill the bosses either. So just go for the boss damage, increased damage taken. But if you know for a fact that that applies to the boss as well, then you can take that too. After that, the maximum total honor is pretty powerful. That just gives you an extra buffer. But I have found that I didn't really need it. I had a couple thousand honor, and that was pretty much it. So as you can see here in the left, I have a box, and there are some spots in that box that are locked. The number of slots that you have available in that box to put relics in will actually get unlocked the more that you complete. So once you complete your first one, it will unlock some more relic slots. Once you complete the second/third one, it will unlock more. And when you complete the fourth one, it will unlock the rest of them. So in this particular case, I am still missing 3 slots. Those 2 in the corner will never be unlocked. They just kind of stay that way. So what you want to do is try and maximize the number of relics that you can fit in here. I believe the bigger relics can have larger rolls on them. So you'll just kind of have to figure out what you can fit in there. My best advice is to just look and see what slots you need, and then just buy relics with the stats that you want that fit in those boxes. So you want to try and fill up all of the boxes that you have available, but you won't be able to unlock the rest of those slots until after you completed the 4th trial. Okay, so as you can see here, I've filled up all of the slots, and we are pretty much ready to go. So as a quick preface, my tooltip DPS on Hexblast was about 30,000 DPS. However, with the Hexblast build that I was running, we had quite a lot of modifiers to that damage with the curses and withered and increased crit chance on them that don't show up. So I would say we were probably more in the 50 to 60,000 range. And I found it pretty easy when I did it. So if you can get in that range for DPS, that's kind of about where you want to be to make it go nice and smooth. The other thing is that your honor, the amount that you have, is based off of a combination of your life, your energy shield, armor, and evasion. And it might also be based on your level. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that includes those. So you want to try and have as much of that as possible, because that will increase your total honor available to you. But if you have a couple thousand honor, that should be plenty. As you can see, I have 3,000 in here, and you can find people who do these trials with 10,000 honor or so. So depending on the build you're running, you may have more or less, but it is also, you lose honor based off of the damage that you take. So if you have lots of damage reduction innately in your build, then you will take less damage. So the first thing that you'll have to do when you enter the trial is complete one of the challenges. There's a whole bunch of different types of them, and we'll kind of go over each one. In this particular case, this one is a gauntlet challenge where you just have to run through and pull levers and try not to get hit by traps. My best advice there is that rolling is very powerful. You can roll through a lot of the traps, such as the fireballs or the spikes. So just try to use that to your advantage. Also, just being patient. The gauntlet trials are not timed, so you can take as much time as you want. There's not very many monsters. The only other thing I would recommend is just make sure that if you're killing monsters, that you're picking up their little blue orbs that they drop, because that is the sacred water that you will need to purchase things from the vendor later in the game. All right, so here I made it to the end of that challenge, and we get a nice little bronze key we can take off the wall, and then we will head on over to the trial map, and let's see if we can just pull that up here. And okay, we're now faced with our first set of choices. So we start there at the beginning on the far left, and we are looking at what choices we can make and which direction that we can go. So this is kind of the crux of the mechanics. You want to try and maximize the amount of rewards that you get, minimize the amount of penalties that you get, and also avoid anything that will make the run almost impossible. So in this particular case, let's kind of see what we have here. We have a gauntlet trial that awards sacred water, a large amount, but afflicts us with fiendish wings on entry. So that'll give us a debuff that essentially makes the monster's actions be faster, they'll move faster, and they'll cast faster. So that's pretty bad. That makes the monsters more powerful, and I believe that this applies to bosses as well. So it's really tricky. You want to try to avoid that. So let's see what else we have here. We have more sacred water, and it afflicts you with low rivers that gives you less sacred water found. That one is also pretty bad. So let's go down again. We'll see. Ritual trial awards sacred water and afflicts you with red smoke on entry. So room types are unknown on the trial map. That is really, really bad. We want to avoid anything that limits our ability to see what's next, because if we run into something that gives us a terrible affliction, then we're going to be in big trouble. Okay, so here I also see that if I go with the middle choice, one of the options I have here is to get a shrine that restores honor or be afflicted with purple smoke, which means that afflictions are unknown on the trial map. That is also very bad. We do not want to not know what afflictions are next, so that's basically a no-go unless we're forced into it. If we go the middle one as well, we have a choice to just go to an escape trial that awards us with a shrine to restore honor, so that's free. It doesn't have anything bad associated with it, so we could go that direction. Ultimately, I do decide to go with the gauntlet trial that gives the more monster action speed. Sacred water, especially in the very beginning of your trials, well, all the way up until basically the fourth trial, is extremely important. So we do not want to limit the amount that we get. We want as much sacred water as possible so that we can purchase as many things from the vendor as possible. So we go this way, it leads us into a safe shrine, and we will continue on. All right, so we've completed that first trial. At the moment, we have to continue forward into the shrine, but I'm looking ahead because you can always see two ahead of you unless you get an affliction that makes it so that you can't. So I'm taking a look at what's next. Essentially what we have is one that gives us merchants have 50% fewer choices, which is really bad. That's why we took those extra merchant options. So we want to try to avoid that if we can. The other option that we have here is a chalice trial that gives us a shrine that greatly restores honor and burdens us with an affliction. All right, so let's go ahead and do that escape trial here. So the escape trials are pretty straightforward. All you got to do is click these little pylons. Then you have a countdown timer in order for you to get to the next pylon. When you click the pylon, a little beam of light will shoot out from it that will show you the direction of the next pylon. Generally speaking, I just kind of go in a circle. I don't think I've ever failed one. My best advice is that you pretty much have to have 30% move speed on your boots. You might be able to get away with 20 or 25, but just find some boots that have 30% move speed. It's going to be extremely important for the final boss, and it's extremely important for a lot of these trials as well, especially these escape trials. I rarely ever even fight the monsters unless they just so happen to be blocking my way. I just found that I never needed to. Okay, so We are going to pick up our reward here. This can give us some honor in exchange for sacred water. Let's see if I take it. Okay, I do end up taking it just to top off our honor. In this particular case, that 5 sacred water that it costs to restore the honor, it's probably not even worth spending the 5. I would actually just rather keep this if I were to do it again. You do not have to activate these rewards at the end if it's not something that you want. So it is optional in that particular case. So let's go ahead and move over to the trial map. Okay, so now we are faced with 2 more choices, which we had already looked at before. We had the merchant restores 50% fewer choices, but we get some sacred water. The other one that we have is a chalice trial that gives a shrine that restores honor and burdens us with an affliction. So these shrines are optional. It's just like the one that we just did. You do not have to activate this. So if you see one like this, it's essentially free. You can go in there without receiving the affliction. So this is going to be the best option. And as you can see, directly after that is a merchant. That's what the little merchant icon is. It's this little dude in a hood. Those are the ones that we want to try and find. We want to build up as much sacred water as possible and find as many merchants to spend it at as possible. You will also get to a merchant after you complete each boss. So that's another way to get merchant options. So ultimately, we're going to go with this chalice trial and continue on. Okay, so the chalice trials are pretty straightforward. All you got to do is click this chalice. It will show you where rares are with those little blood drops. It's basically the same every time. You just kind of go backwards and then go in a little circle and kill these rares. Once you kill the last rare in here, the trial will complete. Then just make your way back to the front. Okay, so as you can see here, once we get to the end, we can spend 5 of our sacred water to restore honor and gain a random minor affliction. You want to avoid random minor afflictions at all cost. Random afflictions are one of the scariest things in these trials. If you get one that reduces your move speed by 40%, your run is basically bricked. If you are running energy shield and you get one that says you have no energy shield, your run is bricked. If you get one that says you have reduced defenses and you are running a lot of armor, energy shield, or evasion, I have heard that it will actually lower your honor, like your total honor that you have, because you have lost some of those defenses. So you want to try to avoid any random minor afflictions. You want everything that you choose to be something that you are aware of and is kind of deterministic. So you can see here that we choose to skip this honor a Kelly, and we go straight to the trial map. Okay, so now this one we have to go straight to the merchant. We don't have any other options, but we can kind of take a look at what we have ahead of us as well. So up above that merchant is an hourglass trial that awards a shrine and grants us a random boon. That is a very good one to have, but unfortunately with the path that we took, we could not go to that, and in return we get to go to a merchant instead. So merchants are more important than those restore honor and grant boon trials, but you know, you just have to take whatever's best. In this case, we just can't get that one. All right, so this one's another gauntlet trial. It's pretty straightforward. You just run around, you avoid the spikes, you kill some monsters, you pick up the sacred water, and then you pull levers and get to the end. You kind of get used to how these work and the directions that you need to go. They do have somewhat of a random layout, but ultimately they start to feel really samey after a while, and you get used to them. Just avoid getting hit, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so we made it to the end of this trial, and we can talk to the vendor. So we have 380 sacred water, as you can see in the top right. That's not a huge amount, but if you have other options on your relics, you could have relics that give you more sacred water. That's not terrible. So if that's what you have available, that's a good one as well. So we have trap steel, 50% reduced damage. Traps aren't scary, so we don't worry about that. Glowing orb boon is pretty good, but not that important. This is one of those cases where if you don't have a lot of relics and you are trying to farm up some relics, you can buy them from the merchant and it will give you relics. So if you happen to find one in his shop that is particularly good, maybe you want to buy it so that you can complete it on a different run or something. It's especially important for solo self-found, or maybe you see one that you think might be worth some money. That boon that gives you Sanguine Vial, that monsters have 30% less max life, is pretty darn good. I'm pretty sure this applies to bosses, so that is basically just more damage, and it's only 220. And then the last one is monsters deal 20% less damage. So in order of importance, I would definitely do Sanguine Vial, Fright Mask, and Glowing Orb. In this case, we do choose to go with Sanguine Vial in order to give them max life, and it'll just give us some more damage. The ones that you are looking for that are extremely important are the one that reduces merchant cost by 50% and the one that gives you 50% more damage. The one that gives you 40% more movement speed is also extremely good, but those are kind of like the three that are huge. The ones that reduce their HP and reduce the damage that they deal are pretty good as well. But if you get those three right there, the move speed, the more damage done, and the merchant costs, you're basically good to go. One thing to note about these merchant choices as well is that there are some boons that are repeatable. Like once you buy it, it'll be consumed. So it'll say like, on the next trial, when X happens, you will get X. Well, that one might show up again. There is one that says the next 10 monsters that you hit will die instantly. Those ones will repeat even if you bought it once. However, these ones that are permanent, like Black Pearl, like Adrenaline Vial, Glowing Orb, the Sanguine Vial, once you purchase it, it will never show up again. So it can be a strategy to purchase as many of these as you possibly can in order to try and guarantee that later you would get one of those really good boons. All right, so unfortunately, we only have 160 Sacred Water left, so we can't really purchase anything else. I would suggest to try and avoid restoring honor with the merchant unless you have a lot of Sacred Water left over and you absolutely have to, and just try and get that honor back from shrines and things. But if you absolutely have to, you can do that as well. All right, so we're looking at our next options now. We have a Chalice Trial that will give us some Sacred Water, but also gives us Blunt Sword, which makes us deal 40% less damage. That's bad. We want to do as much damage as possible, so if we can avoid that, it would be better. The other one we have is Award a Pledge, which can be accepted to change the trial's parameters, but we lose all Sacred Water on floor completion. Not room completion, floor completion. So once you complete, or once you beat the boss, all of your Sacred Water will go away. This is once again an optional one to choose. You will get the water drought on entry into the challenge, but this pledge that can be accepted is optional. You do not have to do that. So ultimately, we do end up going with this Gauntlet Trial with this optional choice. Losing all Sacred Water on floor completion is unfortunate. We want to have as much as possible, but it is much better than dealing 40% less damage, because if we never find a way to remove that 40% less damage, that could be a run ruiner. The thing about these trial parameters as well is I'll show you, they basically give you 3 random options that you can take, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, and they're pretty much just like a free chance at something helpful. There's some that are like remove a boon but also remove an affliction. There's some that are like take 1,000 physical damage but get a random boon. Some of those can be really good. If you have a really tanky build with a lot of HP and you have a lot of honor, maybe taking damage for a boon is good for you. So those are always free ones to take, and they have a lot of options. Unfortunately, in this case, that merchant that we have down there, we can't really get to it without taking 40% less damage, and we don't even really have the Sacred Water for it anyway. So we're going to go with this Gauntlet Trial here that leads directly into another one that is exactly the same, except it doesn't have an affliction associated with it. So let's just go ahead and continue. Okay, so we have completed this Gauntlet Trial. We go over here to this pledge, click on it. You don't have to click on it if you don't want to, but you lose nothing other than that 5 honor in order to, or 5 Sacred Water in order to see the choices, and usually it's worth it. Okay, so it gives us 3 choices. Now, we don't have to take any of these. In fact, we can click that X in the top right and close this and walk away from it. So like I said, it's totally free. The only thing that you lose is that 5 Sacred Water, and the possibility is that we get something really cool. So let's take a look at what we got. We have an option that removes the Fiendish Wings debuff, but we gain a random minor affliction. Honestly, this action speed one, it's not a run ender, so a random minor affliction that could reduce our damage by 40% or give us a 25% movement slow is way scarier. We don't want to do that. The one below that says we lose a random minor affliction, but we lose a random minor boon. That one, could be good depending on the boons that we have. However, I don't think that our afflictions are bad enough right now to warrant taking that. The one at the bottom says that we gain 3 random minor boons There are minor and major boons. Different things can award one or the other. Generally speaking, the minor ones are not as good as the major ones. However, there are some really powerful minor ones, so don't skip on those either. But random minor boons and gain death toll. Death toll says that we take 1,150 physical damage after completing 8 rooms. We have plenty of honor, and these 3 random minor boons are going to be very powerful, and it will also remove those boons from the pool so that we could maybe have a better chance at getting one of the really good boons from the merchant. So this is a great one to take. I have enough honor to warrant taking this, and that is only after completing 8 rooms. And as you'll see, we don't even end up taking this damage anyway. So here we go. We go ahead and we take this death toll 1. We get 25% more maximum honor. We get monsters have reduced action speed, which kind of counteracts that other debuff that we have. And we also got flooding rivers for 50% more sacred water fountains. So that is a really, really good one. And the only thing that we lost is taking 1,000 physical damage. I have 2,000 HP. We'll be totally fine. Okay, so now we're looking at our map again. You can see that we have this gauntlet trial. We're basically forced into that. It's another set of those 3 choices. So we'll just go ahead and skip to the end here. Okay, so we do our pledge, we use up our water here, and then we have gain a random minor boon, gain a random minor affliction, not going to happen, restore honor, and remove Orbala statuette, which is one of our boons that gives us more max honor, not really worth it, and gain 3 minor random boons, and gain corrosive concoction, which says we have no defenses. Now, this can be extremely bad for some builds. If you are running energy shield or lots of armor, lots of evasion, this can be extremely bad. However, in this particular build that I'm running, I don't have very much armor. I have almost no energy shield, no evasion. So this basically does nothing to me. Instead, I gain 3 random minor boons. That's totally worth it, and that's what we're going to end up taking here. Okay, so here we ended up getting Scrying Crystal, where we can see an additional room ahead. That's really good. We got you and your minions deal 50% more damage. That's huge, and the fact that that's a minor boon is crazy. The other one that we got is 50% increase honor restored. Now that's okay. It's not a great one, but it's not bad either. So we'll take that. That's super good. And we lost almost nothing. Okay. So we only have one option now. Take on the boss. This first boss is always going to be Rattlecage the Earthbreaker. Honestly, Rattlecage is pretty easy. The only thing that you need to do is have enough damage and just avoid getting hit by the rocks that he throws down. But if you keep moving around and hitting him, it's really not hard. So let's go ahead and get into the fight. Okay, so once you walk into the room and you walk up to this pile of bones and rocks, he is going to break out of here, crawl out, and then he's going to set off a number of explosions. So you want to walk up, trigger the fight to start, and then walk immediately away and get to the edge of the screen. So you can see here, I'm just swapping out my my gems, or I decide not to. He does this explosion. Oh, I froze him, so it didn't matter. Oh man, we just have way too much damage, so we just destroyed him anyway. Okay, and here we are at the first boss, but this is on a build that I had played previously where my damage was a lot lower. It's still Hex Blast, but this was before I had upgraded a lot of things. So this way you can kind of see more of the mechanics. So he spawns, he does his big explosion. I'm not as familiar with the mechanics at this point in time. He's going to do a big slam. Those will send out little fissures. These little fissures will spawn volcanoes that will shoot out those little orbs as I was talking about, and they do not despawn. So you need to do enough damage to kill him before those volcanoes spawn in too great a number and start killing you. Then he will stomp his feet. This will start sending down little rocks that will fall on your head. You'll see that there's these little fiery like droplets that will come from the sky that will indicate to you. So like these here, you'll see these little droplets. Those will indicate to you about where those rocks are going to drop. So there's a couple dropping on top of me. I'm not entirely sure how the mechanics work at this time, but we get him down pretty fast. As you can see, killing him the second time was way, way, way faster, and that's about how you want it to go. Okay, once we get to the next part here, we are given the option to open some of these chests with the keys that we have. Really, the only chests that you want to open are like relic chests if you need relics. You want currency chests. I believe they are Arcanist chests. And, you know, if you If you want something else like jewels or something, you do that too. But basically, long story short, just save your keys to the end unless you see like an Arcanist check or chest or something really good. But we will get a chance to talk to the vendor again, and you get quite a bit of honor from killing the boss. So we have 249. It's not a ton. We didn't get any sacred water fountains, so we'll see what we have available. So we do have a 40% increase in move speed, Harefoot, but we don't have enough for it. That's a bit unfortunate. That enchanted urn that gives you 30% increased effect of your non-unique relics, that is very strong if you have relics that say, you know, more max honor or bosses take increased percent damage. That will increase the effect of those relics, and especially if you have some really powerful ones. So that's a good one to prioritize as well. Unfortunately, we were a bit poor. We didn't need any of those, so we'll just move on to the second part. All you got to do is just move forward, click on the next door, and continue on. You cannot leave this before going on to the next one, so do not click that purple portal at the beginning. The other thing I need to tell you is once you click this door, it will prevent you from opening chests and talking to the merchant. So do not open the door first. I made this mistake. I think I make it in this run. So don't open the door first. You have to talk to the merchant before doing it. I don't know why it's programmed that way, but that's just the way it is. Okay, the first trial on this second leg of the run, it will give us 3 options at the beginning to choose. So we have contains a merchant. We don't really have any sacred water, and it also gives us less sacred water found, so that's kind of bad. We don't really need that. We get a shrine that restores honor and gives us less max honor. Now this one says it afflicts you with weakened flesh on entry, so this one will give us the less max honor as soon as we enter the trial. This one is not optional. And then we have a silver cache that gives us blunt sword on entry. You and your minions deal 40% less damage. So that middle one is looking pretty good right now. 20% less max honor. That's fine. We've barely lost any honor so far. Now, in my head, I'm just thinking about how I can maximize the amount of sacred water that I can get from those fountains, as well as maximize the number of merchants that I can get into. So I really am not going to make it to this merchant here. So I'm trying to think about how I can path over here. This pathway here is looking pretty good, but we don't know what this room is. This room could be bad, but we do have another option here. So this is kind of looking like a safe route. So you see there, that trial just restores honor, and the one after that just gives a key. Ultimately, we end up just taking that middle one and moving ahead with a chalice trial. Okay, we made it to the end of the chalice trial. We don't need any honor. We still have pretty much maximum, so we'll see what other options we have now. Now remember, we do have a boon that lets us see another set of rooms further, so that gives us some really good information. We have the choice of this hourglass that gives us a pledge to change the trial parameters. That's those 3 choices that we don't have to take, so that's a pretty safe one, and it can be good. The other option here is a sacred water fountain, but it gives monsters more maximum life, so that's not very good. And this here, this is a special one. I believe it's called Blessing of the Wind, and it will restore your honor, and it will grant you a boon, and it does something else that we'll look at in a second. However, we will end up missing that merchant for that, but you'll see that that's a pretty good choice. All right, so now we're doing an hourglass trial. This is essentially a timed survival trial. All you got to do is just fight monsters until the timer goes out. The only thing that you really need to know is that killing rares in here will actually lower the timer, and I think it's by 15 seconds, 20 seconds or so. So if you have the damage and you have the survivability, you want to try and kill these rares as fast as possible, because it'll reduce the amount of time that you have left on the trial and the amount of time that you have to stay in here and fight monsters. So we try to kill them as fast as we can. Okay, we've completed the trial. We picked up all of our water, and now we have another pledge to look at. All right, so now we have a restore honor, but we lose a boon. We don't want that. Remove an affliction, but gain a random minor affliction. We don't want that unless you need to gamble on something that has already bricked your run. Or we have remove fiendish wings, but remove vicious ichor. So fiendish wings gives monsters 25% more action speed, and vicious ichor gives them 15% less action speed. So this is actually a net positive by 10%. If we can get rid of the one that gives them 25% more, but all we lose is 15% reduced. So that's a great one to take, and it's ultimately what we end up picking. Okay, so as you can see here, all we have now for choices is this key, and then we will get to choose again, so we'll just go through the next trial. Okay, so we didn't have a choice on our direction for that last trial, but we do have a choice now. So we can either do this Blessing of the Wind that comes up next, or we will get that Sacred Water Fountain. I'm just looking ahead here to see what sort of options we have. That Gauntlet trial down there was giving us 50% less honor restored. That's not so bad. If we feel like we want to get to that merchant, getting less honor restored isn't bad. If you're, doing really well, if you're not taking a lot of honor damage, that can be a really okay one to take. But we'll see what we end up choosing here. Ultimately, I end up going with this Blessing of the Wind for a random boon. I don't even have a ton of Sacred Water at the moment. We basically didn't pick up any, so this is probably the best choice for us. Okay, so once we completed that trial, we get this Honor Galai for our Blessing of the Wind. It restores honor, we gain a random boon, and we cleanse a random affliction. This is just all good, so we'll see what we get here. Okay, so we get Adrenaline Vial, which restores honor on entering a boss room. That's okay. We're not really losing a ton of honor, but maybe you might need that. And we remove Death Toll. So that's the one that caused us to take damage for getting those 3 free boons. So like I said, we don't even end up taking any damage for that. Honestly, there were better ones for it to remove, but that's not too bad. So we'll take that. All right, so now we're looking at our options once again. We have the Gauntlet Trial that gives us a large amount of Sacred Water, but we take damage on room completion. That's, not that great. Or we just get a free Gauntlet Trial that gives us Sacred Water. That's looking like a pretty good option now. After that, we do have a Shrine that restores honor and grants a boon, but gives us Worn Sandals that reduces movement speed. Reduced movement speed, I'm telling you right now, it will brick your run. You want to avoid those at all possible. Okay, so once we completed that next trial, got our Sacred Water, we're faced with our choices again. Like I said, we want to avoid the movement speed. Our next one that we have here is this Gauntlet Trial that says we get a silver key, but we can see 1 fewer room ahead on the trial map. We already have a boon that gives us 1 extra, so we could probably afford to take that if we have to. But let's look at the next one down. The one at the bottom is another one of those 3 choice pledges, but it says you are not always taken to the room you select. Like we said, we want everything to be deterministic. We don't want anything random if we can avoid it. So we're going to end up going with that middle choice. These other ones are just too bad. Okay, so now that we've completed that, we're on the last set of rooms. You can see here I have a key and 2 Sacred Water. Normally you would want to take the Sacred Waters, but in this particular case, one of our afflictions that we have, as soon as I kill the boss, we will lose all of our Sacred Water. So it's completely pointless for us to take that. We're not going to see another merchant before then, so we might as well just take the key. Okay, so we are on to the second boss. This is the Terracotta Sentinels. It's essentially a Frost Sentinel and a Fire Sentinel. Their entire gimmick is that there's 2 of them and they do lots of large slams. That's about it. The best way that you can handle these guys is if you have a build that can hit them both at the same time and you can do lots of damage, then that's really it. Trying to avoid both of their slams can be tricky. If you're a melee build, this might be hard. My best advice is to, try and strafe around them the best that you can. But with that 40% extra damage and the freeze effect that I have on my build, I'm able to just completely demolish these guys. They really don't have any mechanics that are particularly interesting other than giant slams. So just avoid them the best that you can, but they can be tricky if you are particularly slow or if you don't have a lot of damage. So it's just one of those ones that might just be a little bit of trial and error. Okay, so here we are once again on the Terracotta Sentinels with my build that had less damage, and this way you can kind of see what they do here. All they do is they basically just hop off of their platforms. He'll do a big slam. The other guy will do a big slam. It's kind of mostly just big slams that you got to dodge out of the way while damaging them. They still die pretty quick with my build, but that big slam that does a wave of fire, he will spawn these little things that will explode after a while on the ground. It's very similar to the Act 1 boss on what he does. They're really not that hard. You can get kind of messed up if you are not dodging the slams very well because there's 2 of them. And if you kill one of these Sentinels before killing the other one, it will empower the other one, I believe, and make them just a little bit stronger and bigger. However, I just try and kill them both at the same time. It doesn't really matter. I don't really think it's that important to do one way or the other. Okay, this is where I make the mistake of actually opening the door before talking to the merchant, and we actually we get hurt pretty bad by this one. So as you can see, I talked to the merchant, and he has the Silver Tongue reduced merchant prices, and I have 280 Sacred Water, but I can't purchase it because I've already opened the door. And that is frustrating. So unfortunately, we can't do anything, and we have to move on. All right, so in the third set of trials, we can choose a merchant. We don't have a ton of options at the moment, so we might choose that one. We can do an escape trial with a large water fountain, but we have to get Hungry Fangs, which removes 5% of our life, mana, and energy shield on hit. That one is pretty rough. If monsters shotgun you really fast, or some of the bosses have effects that can deal damage to you, especially the boss at the end, he has a couple of abilities that can hit you multiple times very fast, so that one can be pretty dangerous. The next one at the top only gives us one choice on the merchant. That's bad. We want to try to avoid that if possible. That's basically another run ender. And this bronze key at the bottom says that we get less sacred water found. So we're this is a tricky one. This is a tough one. So we'll end up seeing what we take here. I do end up going with the middle path here to get the sacred water with the escape trial. Ultimately, I decide that the less sacred water found is better than that 5% increased damage. I want to have my chances of beating the last boss be as high as possible, and I think that this sacred water is better than nothing. It would have been really nice now to have that lowered merchant prices, but what can you do? Now, I will make a note here that these trials get progressively harder as you kill each boss, and it's not by a little bit. They get a lot harder. When you're on the fourth trial, it pretty much changes the entire map and the layouts, so the things that you were used to are no longer applicable, and the monsters, they do a lot more damage, you lose a lot more honor, and they are a lot more dangerous. So you do have to be careful and be ready for that as you're moving up through the trials. Okay, so as you can see here, we have an option for a shrine that grants us a boon, restores honor, and it gives us fiendish wings again. We already know that one's not too bad, so if we have to take that, we can take it. But we do have some free sacred water below us, and then the bottom one is a key. We don't really need keys. Taking keys is more for if you are farming these runs for items. In this particular case, I just want my ascendancy points, so we don't really need keys. Ultimately, we're just going to go with this ritual trial to get the sacred water, then probably go into the next sacred water, and then get to a merchant. These ritual trials are pretty simple. All you got to do is kill the skeletons around the portals. You will run into some ritual trials where they're spread out across the map quite a ways, but they're not timed, and I generally find them pretty easy and they're pretty free. All right, we completed that next sacred water trial, and now we are going to the merchant. Okay, so let's talk to the merchant after completing that one. We have Vicious Ichor, Fright Mask. Those are all decent. Let's see what else we got here. Those are pretty much the best ones that we have. Is just monsters deal less damage and have reduced action speed. Glowing Orb is also decent. It is a nice lifesaver, but it's not super priority. It can give you 50% of your honor back, so you know it can be useful. But ultimately, monsters deal less damage is what we want to get. And then I believe I'm going to pick up both of Vicious Ichor and Glowing Orb just to remove them from the pool of potential future choices. All right, next we have a chalice trial that we're forced into that curses us with Enfeeble. Really not a big deal. All that does is reduce your damage by like 15% or so. Okay, now we don't have a ton of sacred water at the moment, but it's either choose the merchant and hope for something with what we have, and maybe we can get some sacred water from the trial itself, or we take a key. So let's just go with the merchant. Unfortunately, we're pretty poor here. We don't have a lot of anything, so we'll just have to skip the choices that he has. We can't even afford anything. I think here I do end up taking the Restore Honor just because I know as soon as I kill the boss, I'm going to lose all my honor anyway. Just to reiterate, that losing Sacred Water on killing the boss, that is just one of the curses that we have on us. So it is not just a natural mechanic. It is an affliction that you get. All right, the third boss is Ashar, the Sand Mother. She can be a little bit tricky. There are some mechanics here. I think we're going to blow her up pretty quickly, but as you can see here, when you walk into the boss room, you will see these little squares around here. These squares, once you step on them, will basically spring a trap. Some of them cause a poison cloud to go around it. Some of them have little poison darts, like a ton of them shoot around the room. Some of them cause little minions to spawn. Once you step on a trap and reveal that particular trap, it will remain that trap for the rest of the fight. So if you click on one and it summons minions, the next time that you click on that same, or you step on that same trap, it will be minions again. So the one that summons minions is pretty good if you want to find that. Now, the reason that these are here is because one of the main mechanics is that she will start burrowing underground and be unable to hit. So as you can see here, we're doing a lot of damage, really killing her rather fast. She's not even going to get a chance chance to do anything. But essentially, she has like 3 major attacks. She has a big sweep around with her tail. She has one where she kind of half burrows into the ground and slams her tail down with poison, and another one where she starts diving up and down through the sand. Once she does this diving thing, you won't be able to hit her. All you have to do is step on one of those traps and it will essentially force her to come back up. So you want to find a trap that you can deal with and then force her back up with that same trap over and over again. So if you are in a panic and you just have to click whichever one you can, that's fine. But that's when you have to click those traps, is when she's going up and down in the sand, because that's the only way to get her to come back up. Now, like I said, I don't have crazy damage. It seems like I'm doing a lot of damage, but a lot of it is that we have those reduced monster life and % more damage effects, and we also have a ton on our relics. So, you'll see that once we get to the last boss, he has got a lot more health than they do. All right, so here is me once again at taking on the Scorpion boss. However, I had a lot less damage during this run. This was before I actually completed it, so this way you can kind of see some of the mechanics. All right, so she pops out of the ground. She does some slams, nothing too crazy. When she goes underground like this and has her tail sticking up, she will shoot these little poison darts at you that will leave these pools of poison on the ground. For CI characters, you're not too worried about this, but for everybody else, this can be kind of dangerous. These bolts that she shoots do hurt quite a lot, and they will leave these poison pools on the ground that you want to avoid. However, you can still hit her in this state, but you do have to run around and try and avoid these darts. Okay, so now she is in the phase where she is going up and down through the ground, and as you can see, at this point in time, I don't know what to do with this mechanic, but Balbala down here says get to a platform, so I go to a platform and trigger one of the traps. As it turns out, this trap is the one that spawns these little beetles. This is the best trap that you can get, because really killing a couple beetles is not hard at all, and they really don't do any damage, and I'm pretty sure they can give you flash charges back. So if you find this beetle trap, that's the one that you want to click over and over again. All right, so she's back underground. We just need to roll around, try and avoid these. Okay, so she goes immediately back underground, and then I immediately force her up. What I don't know at that time is that this will spawn a dart trap, and these darts are pretty rough. It shoots a ton of them, and they're very hard to dodge, and even if you find a spot where they can't hit you, Ashar will eventually walk her way over to where you are and force you out of that spot. So it's kind of a dangerous one to have. If you find that one, I would highly suggest picking a different one when she goes under. Try to keep your distance from her. She does do that sweep, and it can hurt quite a bit, and so can that slam there. That one I accidentally roll onto the trap, and I believe that spawns a gas cloud around the trap. That one's not too bad, but if you're in a position where you have to stay on the platform, then, it is area denial. The Beatles one is better. And unfortunately for this run, I die to honor loss, and so I'm not able to complete it. But as you saw earlier, we made pretty quick work of her when we came back. In order to kill the last boss, you really want to make sure that you're already just beaming down these other bosses. If you're struggling with the second and third boss for damage, you might have a tough time with the fourth boss. It may not be possible. All right, so unfortunately, once again, we only have 244 sacred water, so we won't be able to buy anything except for the restore honor, so we just go ahead and skip it. Okay, once again, we are given some options. We have a merchant, a key, and then a restore honor, but get an affliction. So it looks like the merchant is going to be the way to go, because we don't really need the honor. All right, so like I said, once you get to this fourth stage, these trials are going to look different, and they're going to be a lot harder. For these gauntlet trials, you want to stay out of those little rings because they will slow you, as I recall. The only weird part about these trials is this bit right here. All you have to do is click this lever. You'll see that little circle up there at the top, the white circle. We want to click this lever here. We then click this lever, and we're back to the beginning. However, you can see that we do not have that next door open. This has a special mechanic that it actually takes me a second to figure out here. Okay, what you have to do is step into this circle up here at the top. This will start a timer. After like 10 seconds, you will be teleported back to this circle, and then shortly after, it will explode. What you need to do is step in here, activate the timer, then click this lever, run over, and click this lever up here at the top. After that, it will teleport you back here, roll out of the circle, and then it'll open the next room. So you can see here, we activate it, We click the lever. I think I still end up getting hit by it because I don't realize the mechanic fully, but we click this lever. We get teleported back. Oh, no, we avoided here. So we did that perfectly. Then all you got to do is just walk in here, click the next lever, and you are moving on. Unfortunately for this merchant, we didn't have enough sacred water for any more choices, so we will continue on. Now, when you are on the fourth one, there is a more or less cheese strat that you can use, and it is random on whether or not you get it, but basically how it works is that there is a purchasable option from the merchant called Moment of Peace. Moment of Peace says that you cannot take damage until you complete the next trial. Now, it only works for one room, but it also works on the boss. So what you want to do is try and find a merchant in one of these last ones and have enough sacred water to buy Moment of Peace. In this particular run, we do not get it. We just kill the boss outright. But if you get that, you cannot take damage from the boss, and it's basically a free win. The only thing that you have to do is a special mechanic in the boss room that I will talk about that is really not that difficult. I have yet to fail it, but it's kind of a nice little cheese strat, and it's kind of a way that you can, if you run this enough and get far enough, eventually get a free way into your fourth ascendancy. All right, so here, once again, we're faced with getting a choice of either of these two keys or a door. This key gives us Hungry Fangs, which is not that great. The other option is this Chalice Trial that restores honor and gives us reduced honor restored. I end up deciding that 5% health and energy shield damage taken when hit is pretty dangerous for the boss, so we end up going with that one below that gives reduced honor restored. The Chalice Trials on the fourth floor, very similar. There's just the layout is a little bit different and the monsters are a little bit more dangerous. All right, so now that we completed that one, we have a choice of a ritual that gives a pledge. That's another one of those three choices. It's basically free, or we can get one that restores honor. We basically want to go with those three choices. We don't really need the honor. We're already at full. Once again, some of these ritual trials are super easy. All you got to do is just run in and kill like 3 guys and then you're done. Some of them have more, some of them have less, but in this case, it only took us about 10 seconds to complete this one. Okay, so here's the choices that we have. We have lose a random minor affliction and lose a random minor boon. That's not very good. Silver Chalice, the next minor boon you gain is converted to a random major boon. That can be very good. There are lots of ways to get minor boons, and having them convert into a major boon is good, but we gain a random minor affliction. Ugh, not going to happen. The one after that is gain a random minor boon and gain a random minor affliction. Ultimately, I decided to just skip it and move on. All right, so now here you can see that both of these key rooms lead to the same 2 rooms. This bronze key doesn't give us any more options than the gold key does, so this is pretty much a free choice. We take the gold key and move on. All right, this first choice here is a shrine that restores honor and makes monsters deal 30% more damage. That's not good. We don't want that if we don't have to. The next one here is a pledge with the 3 choices that also gives us monsters have 50% increased max life. So that's a pretty tough one. We got kind of unlucky here. Ultimately, I decided to go with the monsters deal 30% more damage. I decided that my survivability was pretty good, and the extra time it would take to kill the boss was not worth the extra damage that we would take. All right, we lost some honor in this trial, so I do decide to just get the 600 honor back. All right, now we have a Chalice Trial that restores honor, but it makes us take 146 physical damage on room completion. We're at the end of the trial, so basically this is free. It doesn't really do anything. 146 physical damage is like basically nothing. The other option we have here is a Sacred Water Fountain. There's no more merchants to collect, so we don't really need the Sacred Water. So I decide that this affliction that we get on the room below is worth the honor restored, just in case this Chalice Trial is hard and we end up taking some damage. But, you could really go either way here. So we do end up actually taking some damage from this trial, and so it turns out that it was a good idea for us to get this restore honor. And last but not least, we are on to the 4th boss. All right, so we are at the final boss. This is the ultimate challenge of the Trial of the Sekhemas for you to get your 4th ascendancy points, and this is what it all comes down to and what we've worked so hard to get to. So all you got to do is just walk up these stairs into this big arena. He's going to do a little bit of RP here and say some things to you that I really don't care about, and then the fight starts. Okay. So he's going to spawn these 6 portals on the sides of the room. Most of the mechanics in this boss revolve around him shooting around these little white orbs. They do decent damage. They're really not that scary if you get hit by them. However, over a long fight, they may chip away at your health pretty substantially, and especially your honor. So having a flask set up with some charge regen on them can be helpful, especially if you have a really mana hungry build that requires a mana flask. That might be good, depending on how long the fight lasts. The first time I fought him, I ran out of flasks and I just couldn't dodge enough, and I ended up losing to honor loss. You'll see that occasionally these portals will shoot out those little balls. Over here, you'll see these red orbs. That is not part of the boss itself. That's part of my Blood Mage build, so you can kind of ignore those. He will sometimes shoot out these little rings that will sort of do a boomerang effect. You just have to run around and dodge those. It's a lot of bullet time type of stuff. Okay, so in this phase here, he's going to spawn these little orbs on the ground. If you touch these orbs, it will stun you in place for a significant period of time. While he does this, he will shoot this lightning blast in a circle, and he goes in a circle, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times, and it can do a lot of damage to you. This is one of those abilities that will hurt real bad if you have the take 5% of your life and energy shield per hit. So avoiding this is pretty important. What I didn't know when I did this is that you can actually stand in the corner over here. There's 4 corners in the room, but if you stand in one of the corners, it can actually miss you and it won't hit you at all. I don't know if that will stay the same or if it will be patched, but that's what I've seen other people doing. However, if it ever does get patched, I think the way that you are meant to do this is to find a spot in here, because you are not going to be able to run around the room and avoid his circle. He is just way too fast for that. So what you want to do is find a space that's close to him that you can dodge roll in. So this would be a good space right here. And when he swings around, you want to dodge roll through it to try and take the least amount of damage possible. But if you can stand over here in the corner, I don't know if that's an intended mechanic, but that's probably the best way to go, is to just go hide in a corner that doesn't have a bubble in it. And I do hit some of these in here, so we'll okay, so right there, I get stunned, I take a bunch of damage, I lose a bunch of honor. I'm like, I don't know how to dodge this thing. He shoots out this big slowing orb. You just got to avoid that as well. Nothing special about it. It's mostly just bullet time mechanics that you're trying to avoid. He will shoot out this sort of wave of orbs. If you stand in the middle and then dodge through them, that's a pretty easy way to avoid that as well. Generally speaking, standing about in the middle of the room is, you know, pretty okay for most of the fight. That gives you the most amount of time. Okay, so when he dives underground, he will then have a second phase of sorts. You can run into this phase multiple times in a fight, so it's not like he only does it one time. What he does is he will stun you for a bit, and he will spawn a bunch of these orbs around here. Now, you have to pick up these orbs before this little clock goes a full circle, or else you will instantly die. It does not matter how much resistance you have. It does not matter how tanky your character is. And it also doesn't matter if you have Moment of Peace, which prevents you from taking damage. You will still die to this mechanic. It is a complete one-shot, true damage. The strategy for this is A, have 30% move speed on your boots. If you do not, you pretty much cannot do this mechanic. Some people will tell you that you need a movement skill like shield charge. I don't think that's true. I've never had one and didn't need one. So I think you should be okay. There may be times where the RNG is really bad on the location and maybe it's impossible without that. But the other thing that you need, or that you could have that is helpful, it's not necessary, is that 40% increased movement speed boon from the trial itself. That will definitely make this easy. Now, the reason is because over time, he will slow you during this mechanic. So at the beginning, your movement speed is fine, but as the mechanic goes on over about 10 seconds, you will get progressively slower, and that is going to make getting those last ones very hard. So what is the strategy? Basically, we want to cover the most distance while our movement speed is still high. So we want to find one of these orbs that is the farthest away and go to that one. So as I can see here, you know, starting here and going in a circle is not too bad, but I think starting over here and going this way is better. If you can get to a point where you can roll into the last one, that's usually pretty good because your roll will cover a bit of distance. But when you are slow, your roll is also going to be slow. At least the recovery frames on it are. So you really don't want to just like roll the whole way. You just want to roll to get that extra last bit of distance. So I decided to go down. I grabbed the first one. We're getting slower and slower. Second one, third one, fourth one. And I don't even have to roll for that one. I just pick it up. See, not too bad. If you don't panic, it's quite an easy mechanic. I really don't think this boss is that hard. He's just kind of a bit of a DPS check and a little bit of a skill issue where you just have to dodge these little orbs. So now, as you can see, on those previous bosses, we dealt a lot of damage, like almost completely one-shot them in like less than 5 seconds. This guy has way more HP. So you need to be really careful about how much damage you do. If you aren't, if it's taking you a while to kill the first, second, and third boss, you probably don't have enough damage to kill the last boss. It is quite a significant jump. All right, so once again, he tries to do that mechanic, and I can't outrun it. I'm trying to outrun it. All you have to do is stand in that corner over here, and that's how you avoid it. Okay, he's going into another stun phase. So now we look at this again, and we try to find one that's the furthest away. This one is looking pretty good, going here to here to here to here, and then over here. So that is the route that I choose. You can see I do a little dodge there. My dodge roll looks weird when I do this because I'm using an MTX that turns it into a dash. It uses the same animation as if you're using the demon form, an Infernalist. But we managed to pick it up with that last dash. And now we're pretty much at the end of the fight. Okay, he will do a mechanic where he spawns a clock underneath you. This is very similar to that gauntlet mechanic that we saw earlier, where it's going to, after a few seconds, port you back into this pool here. So what we want to do is as soon as it ports us back, we want to dodge out of it because it will explode and deal a bunch of damage. So right when you get ported back, dodge to whatever the closest side is for you to get out. But there we go. We got the kill, and that's it. We got our 4th ascendancy. And a nice bit of loot here. After that, you are pretty much just given a giant room of chests. Once again, you just want to find the Arcanist chests, or if there's something, you're looking for specifically, you could do that as well. But this is just where you get to collect your loot. So that is pretty much it for this guide. Hopefully you guys appreciate that and found it helpful. I know I couldn't cover everything. It's a very long and complicated system, but if you have any questions, put them down in the comments below. Other than that, if you're interested in watching me play some Path of Exile 2 and playing all sorts of different fun builds, you can come on over to my Twitch channel, or I do live stream on YouTube as well. I do them at the same time, and that is twitch.tv/JoeManLuke. Follow, subscribe, do all that crap, and I'll see you next time. Peace out. Oh, and before I forget, I want to give a quick shout out to Sleep, who is a viewer of mine that loaned me some of his relics for that run and basically walked me through on how to do these. So thank you, man. It definitely helped a lot.